So what is up? It's your boy Zero here, and today I have for you the monthly Vanguard Zero tier list. So before I even get started, I might as well just get the shilling out of the way now. If you haven't already, hit that sub button. If you like the video, hit the like button, and tell me what you guys think about this tier list down below in the comments. So without further ado, I guess I should probably, before I start placing things, I should probably explain what each of the tiers mean first, or at least how I look at it. And before I even get to that, if you don't see a specific deck on here, I don't think it's good enough. I think I've probably said this in like every tier list I've ever made, but if a deck isn't on here, I don't think it's good enough. So yeah. So first of all, with the S, this is like the tippy top of the decks. Like these are the best decks in the game right now. The decks you should expect to see all over ladder. The decks you should expect to see people that take into tournaments. And yeah, that's what S tier is. Like the really good decks. The decks you should be expecting to play against. The decks you should know how to play against. And the decks that you're probably playing yourself, because if you want to win, you probably should play one of these decks. A is also good decks, but are not as good as whatever is in S. They're still popular. Most of these decks would still be popular, but so some of these decks can end up being like tournament only decks. I think like the prime example of this is Suk, which you'll never see on ladder, but you will always see in tournaments to some degree. So yeah, A is like the decks that are somewhat popular. You should expect to see them. You should know what they do, but they aren't as good as decks in S. And B is the decks you can expect to see on ladder, but probably won't see in tournaments, but are perfectly playable decks for the average player, like the average like just play ladder kind of player. So yeah. So S, really good decks, the good decks, and the playable decks. I guess if you want to summarize this, yeah. So I guess I'll just start from the bottom. So I think the worst decks here in this category are both the Narukami decks. So Tempest Bolt and the standard Descendant, whatever you want to call it, the two E-Rat decks. Like I think this deck is different enough that I want to separate it. But for all intents and purposes, the two Narukami decks. How the Mighty Have Fallen. They used to be the best deck in the game a few months ago, but now they're like barely playable. Yeah, I've said this so many times before. This deck just doesn't feel very good anymore. Like they don't do anything that other decks don't do better than them. The kill turn is like barely passable. They're cool that they can like kill intercepts, ignore intercepts, gunners, and saucers, and that's that stuff like that. But honestly, they just don't do enough. Like they also don't plus. Like most decks, the only thing that plus them is Chicken, the Rising Phoenix, but it's just lacking too many things to be good. And it's done getting support for a while, because next up we have Legion, no longer E-Rat support, will be a completely different deck after that. So yeah, this is probably where Naru's gonna end up being for a long time, for until we get Brawlers, which is probably in like 2 sets. But yeah, I don't really want to put this deck on here, but like. These decks are like seen enough and like played enough that they're still worth mentioning at the very least, in my opinion, of course. So, yeah, the two Narukami the Narukami decks, it's kind of whatever. Next, I think I will put duos, and to an extent also Pacifica. I do think these decks are like, I think Pacifica's a little better. These decks. Like with the reveals, they looked really good, but like you don't see them on ladder, like ever. And when you do see them, half the time they're just sacking you with crits and not actually doing what the deck is supposed to do. To this day, I still don't know what duos are supposed to be doing, or like what their kill turn is supposed to look like. Because if either just dump on them super hard, or they sacked a lot of crits and I die like that. So yeah, I know one of their cards gets crit. I know one of their cards restands. But the best thing about both fish decks now is the Roan, the grade 2. The grade 2 that has on hit bounce a duo card and then grab a copy from deck. So the best thing about that is you do that and you do PGs. So yeah, that's about it. And then Pacifica, because the deck has like a streamlined game plan. You break grind, you can do 5 attacks a turn. Only problem is that your 5 attacks aren't scaling properly, but you still have the Roan engine with the Roan cloning PGs. Roan can clone other intercepts too. You can clone counter chargers. You can clone the Soul 2 draw card. It's basically just old fish deck plus Roans, letting you clone PGs and other good cards. So yeah, that's why I think fish like deserves a spot on here. I think them being able to clone PGs is infinitely better than whatever Narukami can do. But the problem with this is that like the deck has really good defense, but good defense doesn't matter when you just don't have a way to kill. We don't have like a good way to kill them. Like yeah, you can have all the PGs in the world, but what good are these PGs if you can't kill the other guy? They'll just hit all the PGs out of your hand and then kill you before you can kill them. So yeah, that's why I think fish are down here. At least fish are playable now, right? But I think this is the extent of what they are. They are a playable deck. Next off, I think it's Maelstrom. Actually, no, I think it's Deep Blaze. Deep Blaze after this. They got some cool new toys, I guess. They got Die Kaiser, they got Die Hard, they got a bunch of other stuff. It's okay. It's like at the end of the day, you still need to sack a trigger to actually use Die Kaiser. I still think like the Daiusha Turbo deck's like a little bit better, but like those decks are similar enough that I don't think I want to like split them up into two different decks. But Deep Police in general is just kind of meh. They do sack really hard, call them sack police for a reason, but in terms of actually being a good deck, I don't think they're very good. You see them a lot on ladder, but they either get ran over or they whiff their drive checks and lose. Yeah, I think this deck's kind of whatever. I don't think it's too amazing. I think the biggest problem is that if you're on Great Die Kaiser, yes, you get the triple check, but that also means you don't get the third crit, so you can't try to lethal them from 3. You actually have to push them to 4, and if they're at 3 with double intercept up, Great Die Kaiser does a whole lot of nothing. Yeah, you triple check, yeah, you probably find to a trigger, but you're not checking for a PG, so that doesn't matter. Yeah, that's probably one of the reasons why I think Deep Blues is kind of not that good. Honestly, I think this deck isn't good, just that whoever plays this deck just starts stacking, and the deck looks amazing when that happens, yeah. Next off, the deck I was going for before, Maelstrom. So, the deck got like a little bit of support in the set. They got the Maelstrom Reverse, they got the Blue Storm 12 Get Hacker, and that's basically it. So, they basically just got the Maelstrom Reverse. The 12 Get Hacker is going to be replaced by like stuff like Coral and the Grave Shooter dude, but yeah. Maelstrom Reverse is like a cool addition to the deck. It's got Mario as well. Mario's like an okay starter too, but the deck fundamentally did not change. You do 4 attacks, you draw a card, you retire. Now this thing gets a crit, and you can do it while getting a crit. While also being on cross-ride base, which is cool. But the deck's main win con at the end of the day is still Glory. Glory is still the card that will win you more games more often than not. So yeah. The deck's fundamental game plan did not change. Now you just have like an extra ride target that's also good. The lock one can be the lock one is very awkward with Wheel Assault in specific, but I think overall this deck got like a okay little bump of power, but then I don't think this deck is still like a really strong competitive deck. The deck still has Aqua Force problems. You need to like draw the nuts to be able to like consistently put up double intercept, otherwise you're gonna have grade 3s in front when you swap, because you do basically need a full board every turn, and then you still have the problem of basically auto losing the Link Joker, and that is not a good, having auto lose matchups is not a good thing. Yeah, that's why I think Maelstrom is like this is the spoiler, the top of B tier, Yeah, that's why I think Maelstrom is here. Next, A tier, I think the tail end of this is Minerva. So Minerva is one of those like super cool combo decks that like can like kill you with recalling out lanes with Chamomile, Melissa. They retire now with the grade 2. I don't even remember the name of the one where you Soul Blast and you give your Vanguard on attack. Retire something, or attacking Vanguard retire something. That's pretty cool because Minerva is a restanding Vanguard, so you pop 2 of their back row, you're sitting on cross-ride base, you reset your lane, you get multi-attack. It's cool, but I think the biggest problem with this deck is PG variants. Well, that's with a lot of decks, but this deck in specifically, you can Soul Charge a bunch of them, which is never a good thing. You are very reliant on getting the Chamomiles and Melissas and Soul. Cider helps with that, but you still have to draw those after with also drawing the Cider. That's a quite combo reliant, or a very piece reliant. And then there's also a problem of obviously soul charging your triggers, and deck out is sometimes a concern. But if you know how to just not click the soul charge button every single time you can, deck out is usually not a problem. So, I think the tail end up here, you see it on ladder sometimes. I don't think people will really take it to tournaments or anything like that, because I don't think that's like that amazing. But I do think it's scarier and better than all these decks under it. Yeah. Next off, we have the tried and true, the Tsukuyomi. still a good deck, obviously. When you get your win console, Tom's still an amazing card. But problem with this deck is when you brick, you kind of auto lose. When you don't brick, you do amazing things. You just kind of win the game because you are literally cheating. You could see all 4 of your PGs. You can see all your heals, defensives exactly when you need them. Still a good deck, a very high ceiling, but like I think the reward just isn't there anymore. Yeah, it's still a good deck, and the reward is you're cheating, but you can still get screwed by the opponent sacking. And then your floor is you brick and you auto lose the game. And another problem is decks that can rush you earlier are like becoming a little more prominent. So Tsuk just definitely does not like that. So yeah, like I think it's a combination of the chance of bricking is there also, and the meta in specific right now isn't very favorable towards Tsuk wanting to play like a very slow game. Yeah, that's why I think she obviously the thing's still very good, but I don't think it can't be any higher than this. And then after this, I will have there's 2 decks I'm concerned. I think it goes to Link Joker or a Chaos Starbear, whatever you want to call this deck, the Chaos Breaker deck. This deck is very strong. Obviously, Lock is a very, very stupid mechanic. Very, very good, especially in Zero, considering Intercept is one of the main mechanics, and you block that. You lock the front row, and then they have to deal with dual intercepts, unless they have stuff that can retire or ignore or whatever. But obviously, Lock is a very, very good mechanic. But I think the biggest problem with this deck right now is Ezel exists, Unlockers exist. So they can just turn off your entire deck's mechanic, and Chaos Breaker became a CB1 discard 2, become a Gunner for a turn. Or Gunner and Intercept for a turn. Yeah, like the fact that there is straight up counterplay to your deck is very awkward. Granted, not a whole lot of decks play it, but the sole existence of Ezel Scissors makes this so this deck cannot be S tier, because you straight up you basically have an unwinnable matchup. Like, yeah, you can win, but like the chances of you winning are so low because Scissors just says no to your entire deck, which is really, really powerful. And that's why I think it's here. And then obviously there's still counterplay to it even if you aren't named Ezel. The counterplay being usually as low front row as possible. Some decks can like get rid of the front row after attacking with them. Specifically looking at stuff like Silver Thorns, Spikes, Liberators with Garmor, and then Raging Form, you give the Limit Break first. But that's controllable, so yeah. But yeah, some decks just have good counterplay to you even without unlockers, and then what you do is also highly dependent on your opponent putting out a board and playing into your lock. Like if your opponent can play well into it, your mechanic becomes a lot worse. So yeah, that's why I think it is here. Obviously, still a good deck, and when you get to do your game plan off, your deck is still beyond impressive because they can't play the game. Like basically every deck down here except for like Narukami like just gets blown over by you. Even Tsuk has struggles against this. If Minerva is playing the unlockers, they don't have as much trouble with it because they can just low commit only one lane and then just unlock it once they give you limit break and survive your kill turn, and then they kill you back because they have better kill pressure than you. Because they have a better kill turn than you do. Yeah, that's what I think this deck is here. Having an auto lose matchup sucks. People can play around it. Other decks can play around it. Good players can play around you. But when you get to do your thing, because you flipped a bunch of triggers or you flipped a bunch of heals and forced them to commit a board, and you get to do your thing, you still just kind of win the game a lot of the time. So yeah. After that, I think we have Revengers. So I've been rating this deck quite low as of recent because I don't think this deck does enough. I also think Liberators right now are just Revengers, but like better in every way, more or less. Well, I'll get into that after once I start talking about Liberators. But I think this deck just doesn't do enough. It just feels super awkward to like you generate a bunch of advantage, and that is very good. But your deck honestly lacks a lot of kill pressure because your deck's retire is locked behind the 4 Blaster Darks, and unlike Liberators, you have no way of getting the Blaster Darks like out of damage zone. So or not damage, out of drop zone. Like once you have expended, like if your opponent sees that you're out like 3 Blaster Darks, and they're at 3 and they put out double intercept, like they know that you cannot deal with double intercept. You have to attack into one of them. So they can just safely give you the limit break and not care. So yeah, like the deck's offensive pressure is just lacking right now. Like if you want to use your Blaster Darks to retire their stuff early to either push for damage or retire pesky back row like Dorrance, Balance, Palladiums, stuff like that. But you also want to be able to have enough extra copies to use them for your kill turn, but sometimes you just can't do that because, you know, sometimes maybe you're forced to ride one, maybe one went to damage, you played one out, and now you only have one left in the deck and you can't kill them anymore. I think having a Blaster Dark being your only source of like extra pressure that isn't your Vanguard is really awkward. And then Radiant Form itself also has a bunch of problems, being he has a reride instead of a restate, meaning he can't keep trigger power. And since he's sack 3, if you want to keep double intercept, you can't have double intercept while also keeping the Vanguard booster to boost if the other guy hits defenses. So yeah, that becomes a little awkward, but it's still a solid deck. Something is a very good deck. Yeah, not much to say. Like, it's a solid deck, but it just doesn't do enough. But being solid is honestly good enough for it to be a playable and still like relatively popular deck. But yeah, definitely think it has fallen a bit after a bit of an extra look at the deck. Next off, I think we have this. I think it's Spikes. I think Spikes are still better than Revengers. After the disappearance of Immortal Ashura, no longer being a thing, Spikes have the best super degenerate 3 to 6 kill turn now. You also just happen to have half your deck is tutorable by Jelly Beans. Speaking of Jelly Beans, you have a recyclable heal. You can make your lane scale whenever you want with the taggers. What else? This deck has an amazing lane choker matchup as well. You just tag your entire front row. So yeah, only thing this deck kind of struggles with is decks that can consistently put up double intercept every turn, because for their kill turns from 3 or 4, it requires your opponent to only have one or less intercepts on the board, because you can't do your super degenerate kill turn while they have double intercept up, because the Mason cannot hit. But eventually you'll flip enough heals and draws and stuff to like consistently put up double intercept. You just sandbag them at 3. They'll eventually run out, and once they run out and if they give you a limit break, they just die, which is really good because all your lane scale, your Vanguard lane scale, your rear lane scale. So yeah, it's just a really strong degenerate combo deck. I think it's nothing more than that. Obviously, I think it's very good. I rate it above all the other decks, but yeah, very powerful deck. Honestly, you don't know the power of this until you've played it yourself or played it against a competent Spikes player. I definitely don't think I'm overrating this deck as a bunch of other people think. So they think I am, but I give praise to the deck for a reason, and it's because I've played the deck myself, and this deck is just super degenerate when it wants to be. So yeah, good deck, very good, very powerful deck. Next off, I think we have Jewel Knights. So this is the new like super like grindy deck. I will say though, this deck has a very atrocious matchup against Link Joker. This deck has a but against everything else, you just outgrind them because you out-resource them and like slowly chip away at them every single turn. Every turn, once you're on Ashley reverse, anyways, every turn you get at least a free +1 off of Ashley. If you call them Miranda, it's a free +2. You retire one of their intercepts, so you can go face twice every single turn, and your lane, and you can make your lane scale because of stuff like Miranda and the Alwyn to make sure your hits actually connect. And Miranda can dig PGs, which is really good. So this deck is basically what Fish want to be. They farm PGs most of the time at least. Obviously, if you see them, you grab them, but yeah, they farm PGs while also exerting a bunch of kill pressure, which is really good in my opinion. I think the deck is very powerful. Like, you don't see it that often, but I play that myself. As long as I'm not playing as Link Joker, I'm confident I can win like basically any matchup with this deck. I guess you also kind of lose to getting your entire board wiped, but very few decks can actually do that to you. Unironically, Narukami is one of the harder matchups too if they decide to go for like a board control kind of play. Novell can be annoying. And obviously, like I said before, Link Joker is by far your worst matchup, but everything else is honestly pretty manageable. I guess another downside is that you can't really, since this deck can't really just kill you from 3 randomly. You're forced to take the opponent's limit break ride turn, but since you're basically guaranteed guaranteed to have double intercept every turn, and you probably grab an extra like 1 or 2 PGs, you should be able to just live them and then live their kill turn, and then you just slowly chip away at them after that. So yeah, still good deck, very good deck. Yeah, what more can I say? It's just a very solid deck because it has a very good grind game. And then the last deck that I will put here in A tier is Silver Thorns. I think this deck is very has very mixed receptions. Before I even get into explaining why I think it's here, or explain what my thoughts on the deck, but by no means do I think this deck is bad. Just because it's an A tier doesn't mean it's bad at all. Like, it's the top of A tier, so it's obviously a really good deck. But it's with the introduction of Zelma is just super degenerate with Marichiko now. You get like a bunch of attacks to face. Your Vanguard is always scaling. If you have the line, you can scale that lane as well. Yeah, it just and you can aggro early while also scaling and like pseudo not take cards up because you CB1 to like call cards from Soul with the Marichika, and then just they go back. You technically didn't plus, you didn't minus. You just use the counter blast instead. But I think the biggest problem with this deck, the reason I don't think it belongs in S tier, is this deck. If you aggro early, which this deck does have to do, honestly, it does need to get the early tempo. If the game gets dragged on for too long and you didn't hit enough triggers, or the opponent is just out-resourcing you, you'll get to a point where if you don't have anything that's not named Venus Luke to ride, you're very screwed because you have no cards to play with. Like a lot of the times, if this deck aggroes and doesn't see their draws, the opponent will just like sandbag you, kill your cards, make sure once you run out, they just like kill you from 3. You live, and then you might or might not be able to kill them on the crackback. But yeah, like I think the base problem with this deck is that yes, it's super powerful. Yes, the rush is super nice and everything can scale. But the biggest problem to me is that this deck can run out of steam really easily if you don't see enough draw triggers. That is with a lot of decks, but I think in this deck in specific, it really is apparent because you don't generate any like you don't generate like a bunch of advantage. Like the only card that generates you a bunch of advantage is like Venus Luke and the base Luke, and base Luke is kind of iffy. Venus Luke is good though. Venus Luke is like pretty good for situations like that where you don't have any cards to play out. It's like good at aggroing, has strong kill turns that aren't actually locked by limit break, but can run into resource issues. Yeah, that's why I think it is the top of A tier. There is an argument to put it into S tier as well, but I personally do not think so. And finally, the S tier decks. I'm just gonna put them all down and explain them one by one. I think Ezel belongs here. I think Liberators. I personally think Liberators are. I think Ezel's better, but I think Liberators have like more results and are more common. So my bias aside, I think I'll put like this, and then I think Kagero is the best deck in the game right now. So start out with Ezel. Ezel is a straight up counter to Link Joker, but Ezel also just has a good game plan as everything else. If you want to play pseudo Reiji, this deck can actually just pretend to be Reiji for a few turns and just deny limit break and slowly chip away the opponent's PGs while also killing their board off. With the Saphir, refunding your counter blast and using Ezel like twice a turn. Very powerful. Or alternatively, if you're forced to dunk them to 5, you push them to 5. If they don't kill you back, you can either ride into Blind Ezel, ride into Zenith to get the double check when they're at 5 pretty early into the game. This deck can play the game depending on the situation that they are given. They can either deny the opponent's break ride, or they just push to 5 and then just try to kill as fast as possible. They also have pings, so the opponent cannot deny you out of your game plan if you don't want them to. You just play down your ping, and then now you can do your thing. You still have the spirits to retire, and at worst, you're forced to play Blonde Ezel game plan, which is still generating double intercept every single turn, and having a really big Vanguard that scales. So, yeah. And obviously pings are cheating because you can deny them heal, you can heal you're not supposed to, but yeah. Very solid deck. I personally think this is one of the best decks in the game right now. Obviously put it in S tier for a reason, but yeah. You don't see it very often, and the ones you do see on ladder are like atrociously bad lists, but when built properly and when played properly, this deck is very, very powerful. Next off, we have Liberators. So, Liberators and Kagero in the grand finals were like the two most played decks. Liberators being the second most played, Kagero being the most played. Well, I'll get to Kagero later, but this deck is very powerful. This deck just does what Revengers do, but like better in almost every way, because the main problem with Revengers is that your Blaster Darks are very limited. With Liberators, your Blaster Blades are basically not a resource a lot of the time. Wingle grabs it, Breakride Ganslot grabs it. If you call it Zenith, Zenith is a Blaster Blade. If you call it Zenith from a deck, of course, but Zenith is a Blaster Blade. Now the deck also has Balin to countercharge for you, which is very, very good. Because that was one of the main issues of the deck before, the Counterblast, but now you have Balin, so Counterblast is much less of an issue. You have Zenith as an actual finisher now. You have Garmor to protect you against random matchups that just can't do anything if you can stop the retire. And then Breakride Ganslot is good because you can scale your lanes and get you back a Blaster Blade. Yeah, this deck is just all around really good at doing things. Like it doesn't have like, it's just a very solid all around deck that can exert kill pressure, that has kill pressure. It can turtle up with Garmor if it needs to. You have early rush because you can scale your lanes and stuff with Balin, and S-Strike can also let you do low commit early aggro because he gets to call you a free card. So yeah, like this deck is just very solid all around. The games where you win by just like aggroing your opponent early and they don't flip defensives and stuff, like you just feel so good about those. Like you just auto win those games a lot of times. But yeah, that's why I think this deck is here. Zenith and Balin really solved all the problems that they're keeping Liberators from being a good deck before. Being Counterblast and having a finisher, so yeah. And then finally we have Kagero. Kagero being taking up 7 out of 8 players took this to grand finals. So like I think even if we were to ignore everything else, like just looking at the pure numbers, this deck I think is very clearly the best deck in the game. You have a card that just ignores triggers once you're at 5, obviously, like in Nobel. Dote is still very powerful. Base Over is still very powerful. Dauntless being buffed makes them a lot more usable now. And then the deck also has cheaper tire in the critics. You have a way to return the Nobel back to deck, so you can play like a recyclable heal of sorts. Striking is still a very good turn 2 tempo play because if you play a card out, you can choose to, you don't really give up on the damage that turn, and then you get 2 crit on the next turn. Or if you don't want to give them Counterblast or whatever they might want to do on turn 2, Striking just says no to that. So yeah, this deck is just very powerful. The only downside of this deck obviously is that it is a bit reliant on draw triggers, but if you are on stuff like Dote, you get extra drive checks, so you should, realistically speaking, get extra cards. Yeah. It took almost 30 fucking minutes, but yeah, this is the tier list. Once more, tell me what you guys think in the comments down below. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff. And yeah, this is the tier list. Yeah, not much else to say. I think this is what the meta of the game currently looks like. I guess with nothing else, I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.